Ronnie,
Hi.
we've already been talking in funny accents before we started the recording.
Yes, yes, as a matter of fact, we have, yes.
Maybe we should do the whole thing like this.
I used to work with a guy when I was the chef at the golf club. There was a guy that he was a sales guy, and he was from Birmingham, and he would tell me about the Birmingham accent. He's from Birmingham. He needed like a tweed jacket with leather things on it and a pipe.
Birmingham.
Yes, I'm from Birmingham. Let's get a couple of people over here, please. To tidy up all the things over here.
Birmingham. We love you in Birmingham, by the way.
And then if you drive like 5 minutes to the east, you have a completely different accent in England. It's
Sure.
really funny.
It's great.
Whereas Canada, it's like, you go coast to coast and we pretty much all sound the same. There's a
And with
slight difference.
slight differences.
Like if you go deep into Newfoundland, I'm sure you get the hard. Hi, from come to east there, bye.
Yeah,
But
bye.
um,
Bye bye. All
but
right.
yeah, when I lived in Vancouver for 2 years and there was like zero difference, zero accent difference.
I don't know. Vancouverites, there's a thing. There's say like Vancouver. I live in Vancouver. And
I
sometimes,
never once heard that.
yeah. And sometimes there's like, I'm, oh, what is it? Swimming. It's not dropping their G's, but it's adding a swimming. I can't think of it right now. Let's move
Hmm.
on.
Okay. Sorry.
I don't want to spend all the time talking about accents. I have some very important
Very
information.
important things. Let's move along then, shall we? Get things going.
Get things going. So last time we started to talk about like who's doing the programming, right? Like I have like wake up in the middle of the night and I have this thought. And then so we talked about this idea of like who's doing the programming. And we went into talking about free guy and oh, we're all just like players in video games. So I think that's a very interesting question because I do have a friend who is like into fifth dimensional stuff where there are like higher beings who are like we're being like information is being downloaded into our minds from these higher beings. I don't know about that. Um, but I like this question, who's doing the programming? Because or what is doing the programming, because you started to talk about oh some of it's nature nurture, like some of it is I get from my parents, some of it I get from somewhere else. You also talked about people being born inherently crabby. I don't agree with that. Like I could say, because I could say oh I was born inherently crabby for sure, but I actually don't think that's true. I think I was born to parents who were had their own crabbiness going on because of their parents. And so like I was born into like a perfectionist, um, highly kind of rigid way of thinking. And so I think I was born with that. But do you actually think like people are like born that there's something in their DNA that's crabby?
I if I can remember, I don't remember exactly what I said, but I think I started to allude to a point that was some people are just born. I hate using this word because I know it's not the right word, but just they're just more susceptible to being a certain way, or they're more, what's the word? Like the programming is
Okay.
there. So if you get enough of the environmental stuff once the person's born, then they will fall into that, personality type a lot quicker, rather than somebody maybe that wasn't born with that particular gene. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
So
if I'm wrong, then my brother and I should have the exact same personality, but we don't,
yeah,
right? Because we had the exact same upbringing.
yeah.
There were very few differences between the two of us. I mean, so we were clearly born with the predisposition for certain behavioral traits. We just
Um,
never think to list them or write them down, right? So we are what we are.
and where does that come from?
Good question. And I mean, obviously, I don't know. I have
We
no
don't know.
idea. I can only
We
speculate.
know, I think we know a little bit more about intergenerational trauma. We know a little bit more about the passing down of uh, traits in utero. We know a little bit more about these things. I also, again, like, I don't know about past lives. I don't know, but the possibility that I think there are enough people out there working with past life material that we could say it's a possibility that there's some carryover in this one from the others.
I I have zero evidence to support whether that's true or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, me personally, I think it's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
I truly believe that when we are born, the only programming we have is what we got through our DNA, and that goes for our physical traits, our personality traits, and our behavioral traits. And then everything else is environmental. Whatever we're exposed to while we're alive will map us into whatever it is. But then when we die, that's it. Lights out. That's what I believe. It's bleak, but that's what I believe. Lights out. There's no afterlife. There's nothing. Our body shuts down. All the things that make me, all the electricity in my brain and the synapses firing and all that stops. Therefore, I cease to exist, and Ron is done, gone forever.
Okay. All right. So that's interesting. And it doesn't include, if you're talking, you need evidence for certain things, that doesn't include the fact that your DNA has been traveling for billions of years.
Right.
So your DNA is going to continue to travel in some other form.
Right. 100%, 100%. But it isn't me. It's pieces of me, right? In fact, if you want to talk strictly binary biology, it'll be the next, like both my kids have exactly half of me.
Yeah.
Right. And then half of their mother. So they become whole new people.
Right.
Right. I mean, like, I just don't know. Right.
Yeah,
So
you don't know.
I just make up stuff in my mind that sounds plausible.
Sure.
And I base it on whatever I've been exposed to my whole life, and listening to people like Stephen Hawking. Like, when Stephen Hawking was quoted as saying that he doesn't have any evidence to support whether or not there is or is not a God. He says, I don't know if there is or there is not a God, but if there is, whoever he or she is has chosen to not involve themselves in what's going on here on Earth.
Yeah.
Which is a really interesting thing for a super genius to say.
Yeah.
And it leads me to start believing in things like, okay, well, if I were to believe the Bible, can I say verbatim? Is that the right word? Like, word for word? Is that what that means?
I would say literally true.
Literally true. Yeah. Then God gave us free will. If I remember my Sunday school, God gave humans free will.
Yeah.
Right? Which means we are literally free to do and act and behave in any way we want to, with or without God. He gave us that power, which is kind of powerful. We can even choose whether or not we want to believe in him. So how then can this omnipotent God have a master plan if
I'm going to stop you.
Of beings on the planet are doing whatever they want?
I'm
right?
going to stop
but
you.
Wait. No. Let me finish it, because it's interesting. I make it go full circle. You brought up the whole different, like the different dimensions, right? There's a fourth dimension and a fifth dimension, and are these higher beings, or one higher being that's sort of like controlling it all? Here's something really interesting. What if God's master plan and our own free will are happening at the same time, and we just can't comprehend that because we have to have it one way or the other? And I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
Well, that Stephen Hawking's thing and what you're talking about still make the assumption that whatever this thing is, it's separate from us. It's still talking about an outside being, as opposed to, and I wanted to talk about this, and now we don't have enough time, but Alfred North Whitehead, who was a mathematician and a philosopher, late 1800s, early 1900s, he talked about reality consisting of processes. So that we need to see the the world as a web of interrelated processes rather than material objects. So this idea of, you know, oh, I don't know if I believe in a God or not, but if I do, or if it is, or is it interfering or is it not? Is it giving us free will? Still operates on the assumption that there is something else, as
Right.
opposed to we are all part of this process, which is sort of what you said when God's will and our will are operating at the exact same time. So I want to, because we always love to talk about movies, I want to segue into Interstellar for like 2 minutes, because again, like if we're talking about past lives or whatever, it's like, oh, I don't believe in past lives, or I don't have any evidence about past lives. And yet, what if there are processes going on at different, what we think of as different stages of time or as different dimensions? They're actually not. They're all an interrelated web of process. Yeah. What do you think about that?
I think that's all really, really cool and interesting. And there's absolutely no freaking way we have enough time to talk about all of it.
No, but we do
But I
have
love it.
to say, so then can you say briefly like why Interstellar is like your favorite movie of all time? Because it does talk about these levels of reality that obviously resonate with you on some level.
Huge. Yeah. I mean, there are so many reasons why I love Interstellar, and it isn't just the science part of it, and the fact that a lot of it was quite relevant in the science field. Like a lot of astrophysicists like the movie too, because like, well, for example, they nailed the black hole. Like the way they thought a black hole would look like is actually what it looks like. You know, if they finally got an image of one and they were right. Like that's pretty cool, you know, when you think about it. Um, to your point, I don't know what else to say other than it was just so okay. So when he's at the very end where there's that Tesseract and he's like looking through, and that was really well done too. The CGI of him being in like every single moment in one little girl's room, you know, and the way they had it all pictured, and they were kind of like, you know, he could travel through and physically,
Yeah.
like that's something that I would have never come up with.
Yeah.
So that really
And
resonated with me.
exactly. You could never have come up with it, but there's something in your being that goes, this is plausible to me.
Oh, huge,
Like this
huge
is
plausible.
actually, I've no evidence for this, but there's something plausible about this.
Yeah, yeah. And when he kept saying, like the robot that was with him, Tars, kept saying like, "Who's we? Who's we?" And he goes, "Us. It was us in the
Yeah,
future. Like, time isn't as linear as we thought it was." You know?
exactly.
So he kind of got an aha moment. But even like what was his name, Cooper, in the movie, he still wouldn't have had the brain to be able to understand how he was there.
Time isn't as linear as we thought it was, as we think it is.
Well,
But
and it makes sense because if you apparently the closer you get to a black hole, the slower time goes to you, but not to the outsider looking in. So this is where I start going, like my brain starts going, ah. Well, what are we looking at then when we look at a black hole?
exactly.
Right? Like if stuff is around it because there's it creates like a disk, right? And then the reason it has like that bubble is because the disc behind is kind of creating a bit of a sort of mirror image, and that's why it looks round with a disc. And but if that stuff that's right in front of it that's slowly getting sucked into the black hole is slowing down in time, how far back are we looking then? Like
That is the
that kind of opens up
question.
a whole thing. Like maybe the universe is older than we thought it was.
Oh yeah, of course. Anything we know now, we know is going to be smashed later on, like it
Eventually, it
always
will
has
be.
been. By the way, I love your pink, and I am purple, and now I realize we must say goodbye